Hello and welcome back to a new video on my YouTube channel. And two things are especially important today. First, the news from Jackson Hole with Jerome Powell. What happens next? Will there be interest rate cuts or not? And the second thing is, of course, currently the most important topic of all. Is there going to be peace between Ukraine and Russia? What does the USA have to do with it? What is the rest of Europe doing, and what does it mean for stocks as well as the crypto market? You'll find out all about it today, once again, exclusively on my channel. So make sure to stay tuned and feel free to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss anything. We'll see each other right after the intro. Before we dive into the depths of the on-chain database, a quick reminder for you. I'm back from vacation and I'm of course excited to get closer to you all again on a daily basis. But from now on, we'll be live streaming every Monday and Wednesday from 2 to 4 p.m. So if you have any coins you'd like us to analyze, if you want to exchange ideas, or if you want to expand your trading know-how, then join the live stream. Have a great exchange with us. There's always something to win. It's always fun and it's always full of enthusiasm. All right, let's get started with the on-chain database. You know the drill. The blue line shows the accumulation of Bitcoin. So it's still moving from the top left to the bottom right. But we can also see that long-term holders have been buying in here. So they haven't continued to sell off. That's good for the peace of mind, if you want to put it that way, for investors. This also shows a certain level of confidence again. If you look at the current situation, you can see that there have been purchases from both short-term and long-term holders. In total, 2,464 Bitcoin have been withdrawn from the exchanges. That's good. And we're also seeing very strong volume, 48.8 billion, almost 50. That's exactly what you want to hear and see. It should be noted that it's not just Jackson Hole. Of course, the potential peace between Russia and Ukraine has also caused volatility. That will now be a main topic of this video. This is going to get really interesting. I can guide you a bit here and explain what actually happens to the crypto market if peace is achieved now. Because a lot of people are uncertain about this, and that's what we'll be talking about. All right, yes, we have open interest is decreasing. So bets totaling over 2,700 Bitcoins have been withdrawn. We can see that the ratio has become significantly smaller, and even the long dominance has decreased slightly. The closing price for Bitcoin was just under $116,300. Yes, you can talk about it, it's okay, but it's really both. It's actually a mix between bullish and neutral, okay? So from that perspective, but primarily, it does have a slightly bearish touch when you see that the bets are being withdrawn. So it's always a look into the future. On the other hand, seeing that Bitcoin was bought is, of course, a bullish impulse again. But overall, you could almost call it neutral. Of course, we also look at the spot ETF data, which is becoming a bit more important now. All right, with Ethereum, 22,500 units were sent to the exchanges. Of course, there's a reason for that. They want to sell them, and we can see that here too. The bets have dropped massively. The long dominance has fallen rapidly to actually increased, to 0.009. That's positive, but the ratio, wow, that's really extreme. So there are fewer bets and much, much less risk. It's really incredible what's been happening with Ethereum right now. If you look at the spot ETF data, Bitcoin had an outflow of 121.7 million. And now, if we look at Ethereum, it's 196 million. That's what I told you before. If you remember, feel free to write it in the comments and say, oh yeah, Jay, you said that. I've always said that inflows in the altcoin sector will be exponentially faster, but at the same time, as soon as there's negative news, or we even head toward a bear market, which we're not in yet, then there will be a really quick outflow. And that's comparable to the cycles we've seen or are seeing in the regular crypto market, how quickly prices swing back and forth, or when Bitcoin drops 10%, altcoins drop 20%, and so on and so forth. So these topics are, of course, important. Just look at both Bitcoin and Ethereum, both showing very, very bearish signals here. It's still a bit too weak with Solana to really talk about any major movements right now. In my opinion, this has zero impact on the price of Solana. If anything, it's Bitcoin or even Ethereum that have more of an influence on it. We've seen outflows, more from Ethereum than from Bitcoin. You can see that in the blue block here. Dominance still remains with Bitcoin at 59.1% and 30.2% for Ethereum. Even though Ethereum has increased significantly, it's still very interesting. The fear and greed index is currently still positioned within the neutral zone, specifically registering at 53 points. This indicates a balanced sentiment in the market at this particular moment. Furthermore, the season or seasonal index stands at 44 points, which in essence continues to place us in a very strong and advantageous pole position. We are simply and patiently awaiting the definitive green light to commence our next significant move or action. If you take a closer look at the market liquidity, you can say, wait a minute, we have an incredible parabolic curve from the top left to the bottom right. These are all long positions waiting to be triggered. If you have a spot, meaning an order book entry, and you say you want to go long at $112,000, that's the red block here. The leveraged positions, you can clearly see the dark orange ones here. Those are at an extreme 100x leverage. The bright yellow ones here are already at a significant 50x leverage. Then there's a substantial 25x, and finally a considerable 10x leverage. So you can really observe here just how many individuals are overextending themselves financially, taking on excessive risk in these volatile markets. So you could say down to $113,000, there's about $1.15 billion. If you look up at the higher levels, there's a kind of flattened curve. So it's not that spectacular to target, although there is an interesting block here. Around $116,700 would actually be an intriguing block, but it's not really much. So we're talking about 400 million there, which isn't interesting. The market always goes where the money is. That's completely normal. That's just the nature of it. And we need to be a bit careful about that. So very interesting at the moment. In my opinion, a slightly deeper drop would be a bit more exciting towards 112, 113, somewhere around there. And then to gather strength again, to liquidate the shorts on the way up, that would definitely be interesting. So from an order book technical perspective, you could say once again, Papa J was right. When we moved up here, I always said, guys, down here, we have no support. And that's still the case now. So support starts at $110,000. Of course, you can see that when the small blocks are accumulated, they do add up to a certain amount, which means the drop naturally slows down accordingly, but the bears are always much faster than the bulls. That's very, very pronounced in the spot markets. So people position themselves much, much faster than the bulls, and here at $120,000, resistance remains, and then again at $125,000. That means for us, this sequence here between 110, so between 110 and $120,000, that's where the action is happening right now. That also matches the liquidity we've looked at. Yeah, and now let's see if we can spot it or if it's visible. Yes, it's very exciting. I'll also try to pause it at just the right moment here. Yes, where Trump was standing with the delegation from Europe behind the journalists. You can see, of course, where he said, fight, fight, fight. That was during the attack on him, or rather the attempted attack, as we should say. Yes, the atmosphere here was, of course, very, very special. Zelensky came wearing a jacket and shirt, of course, all in black, but at least he made an effort to dress appropriately. His words were clear. I also listened to the press conference from March, and even then, as he said, how important it is to speak with one voice. But now there are many, many things. You really have to listen 2 or 3 times to catch everything. Because now he says, well, this is a decision that, of course, Ukraine has to make. When you think about the Danube and all the territory that's being given up, it's on a scale like if America were to give up Florida. That's not something you do easily, but these decisions have to be made now, and the market is still a bit uncertain at the moment. A peace agreement, okay, that can be reached relatively quickly. You can sense now that the whole world is somehow getting involved in all these matters, and in the end, you naturally ask yourself to what extent these talks, because now they're setting up one between Putin and Zelensky, and after that it's supposed to become a 3-way conversation with Trump, Zelensky, and Putin. And to what extent, we all know how quick-tempered all 3 of these people are, although you could almost say that Putin will probably be the one with the coolest head. But the other 2 can get heated pretty quickly. We've seen the talks, we've all witnessed it. To what extent will they find common ground? To what extent can peace actually be achieved? That's the question the market is currently asking itself. What would lasting peace truly mean for stocks as well as crypto? Of course, in that particular case, if peace does indeed come, money will quickly and significantly flow back into risk-on assets. This means, in particular, risky stocks, whether in tech, AI, or other chip manufacturing sectors, for example, but also, of course, in the crypto market, like Bitcoin and especially the altcoins. In my opinion, they would then see gains again relatively quickly. People are hoping for one or another surge upwards. The question is, how sustainable will that be? How significant, or what is tied to this peace agreement? The US is providing certain guarantees here. Really very, very interesting. I've read quite a bit about it, and in my opinion, it remains one of the most important points at the moment. They now want to organize a kind of summit meeting where other countries will also be present and so on. So that's going to be interesting. Then we have Intel, which has kind of fizzled out in the same way. Intel has a huge problem, and now it's being said, yes, I'm getting a $2 billion lifeline from SoftBank or from SoftBank's investment arm. There are all these little puzzle pieces everywhere that are slowly coming together to form a bigger picture. Often it's the case that right now there's a lot of speculation in these risk-on assets where people are assuming we'll see interest rate cuts thanks to Jackson Hole, or at least they're expecting that something will leak out at Jackson Hole. Like, for example, I'll say something like Jerome Powell is confident about cutting rates, some kind of statement like that. When that happens, or when you hear things like that, it further reinforces the momentum in this broad sector, because of course, with interest rate cuts, money becomes a bit more liquid again, cheaper, and people are once again more willing to invest. So as we can see, this is going to be a very, very exciting thing for us. And whether that will actually happen or not, we'll find out. So first of all, Ukraine-Russia is supposed to happen in the next 2 weeks, at least the meeting between Putin and Zelensky. They are currently working very hard to prepare for this. What about territorial concessions? What guarantees are there? What happens afterwards? Reconstruction of Ukraine and so on and so forth. Then, of course, there's the topic of the Fed. The Fed has two primary tasks that it must fulfill. One is, of course, the stability of the US dollar, which won't be easy with peace either, because the dollar will naturally fall. Then you have the interest rate cuts, which will weaken the dollar even further. So you see people move out of the US dollar again, then into gold, then into other things that are also interesting and offer opportunities, including, among other things, foreign currencies. Because, for example, the euro will gain a lot of strength if peace does come. These are lots of little cogs in your mind that you just have to try to connect together. Yes, and then they have the second task, which is, of course, to support full employment in the USA. That means using mechanisms like lowering or raising interest rates, and of course, other things like the balance sheet and so on. Of course, it depends enormously on how the Fed reacts. So it's going to be interesting. There was also talk about recession, especially here. The surprising stability of US consumer spending is the main reason why the economy has not slipped into a recession. What is also interesting in this report, by the way, is that apparently the rich and super rich have significantly increased their consumption purchases here. So this is really a very, very interesting report as well. Yes, I wanted to mention again that it's important for us for the further course of chart analysis to determine where you want to trade. And for trading, I can recommend Femex to you, among others. Femex has been a partner of ours here in the Academy Club since day one, and you can also check it out. You only see green dots here. These are all trades that we make in the Academy Club. Here we guide you every step of the way. We learn together with small capital. When do you enter a trade? When do you exit? How do you enter a trade? How do you exit? And how do I set up my risk management to avoid losses? How do I work on my mindset to do things the right way? If you're interested in that, you can also find us on Telegram, of course. But of course, for those who think, yeah, anyone can say that, I've blurred out the names, of course, but I actually have a lot more, but these are just a few. You can feel free to pause the video and read through them. So here, you really get a complete solution from A to Z that you can be satisfied with. And yes, so there's a lot of feedback. Most people clearly said, since we've been in the Academy Club, we make far fewer mistakes, are more accurate, and so on and so forth. There were also exceptions. Some said, I missed something once, ended up with a loss, but I'm already ready to make up for that loss, and so on. Feel free to take a look. Pause the video. You can also take a screenshot if you like. It's no problem at all. I definitely wanted to mention that again. For those who say, community exchange in a masterclass setting isn't really my thing, I'd rather do it alone, well, I can definitely recommend the masterclass basic course. There is no better course in the German-speaking world. There you can really learn everything from A to Z that's important. Well, then you'll be guided step by step and really taught everything. And again, you can learn at your own pace. You have access for a whole year. You can go through the training as many times as you want. At the end, you even get a diploma. So feel free to use it for your own further education and so on. Now, about interest rate cuts. We talked about it. So what's the situation? Of course, nowadays, the Fed exchange is probably updated by the minute when you look at it. It remains a very exciting development. As long as, or if something leaks out, we'll be the very first to see it here, whether it jumps up. We were already at 94, 95 points where a rate cut was expected. Now we have over 16 points speaking against it, and we'll see how things look at the end of this week, or rather on Sunday. Because in my opinion, it won't be a quiet weekend. I can well imagine that all of us here present in this discussion will be kept quite a bit on our toes, anticipating what comes next. So, as specifically requested by the vibrant and engaged community, we will indeed start our in-depth analysis with Cardano. And Cardano, it has been quite a significant while since we have thoroughly analyzed it in any great detail. We are certainly going to undertake that comprehensive analysis together today, right here, right now. Back then, we didn't quite make it from TP1 up to TP2. We also talked about this here. This would be a descending triangle for those who aren't familiar with it, which is actually a bearish pattern. But even back then, we said we saw a possibility for a breakout above resistance. This is the resistance diagonally. And that's exactly what happened. Now, of course, some people are asking, so what's next? By the way, I think that there are a lot of projects on the market, really a lot, but I think Cardano is among those that have disappointed the most, if I may say so. And that's why the question is justified. Should I? Because I get this question almost daily. Should I sell everything I have in Cardano and invest it in Bitcoin? So saving in Bitcoin is definitely the right way to go. The question you have to ask yourself then is, does Cardano actually do anything for me? If it's just speculative, then I'll just hold it for 15 years, whatever. Or do I want to make money with it in order to invest in Bitcoin? These are always the kinds of issues you have to deal with. If you take a look at the market right now, we're in the middle range with the RSI. That means it's neither overbought nor oversold. We've seen bearish crosses and we're in a slight recovery phase. That means we still need to build up a bullish situation. But if you look at the whole topic today, you can already say, yeah, well, we need a certain level of risk management here. Of course, with Cardano, we could also fall into a certain range here. We have the range here between 0.61 and 0.55. But, and now come all the statements I made before the video. If peace comes, and that's still a long way off, okay? Even if there are talks in 2 weeks about whether peace will really come, what discussions will be held? That could still take a whole year, if not even 2. Even if peace does happen and there are occasional skirmishes here and there, it will still take some time. So it would be utopian to think that it would suddenly be signed at the table within 14 days. I can hardly imagine that, but of course I'm interested in your opinion. Feel free to write it down below. Yeah, and now to get started. Well, to be honest with you all, I'm not a particular fan of trading digital coins or cryptocurrencies that are just based on empty promises and lack any real tangible value or clear utility. So please just be extremely careful and exercise due diligence with that, as these can be very risky investments. I don't want you to get burned. That would really be a shame. That's why I would start learning to trade with something like Bitcoin here. Not always right away with the altcoins, but here this is your risk management. Or for those who say, I want to enter a long position because peace could eventually come, we currently have a range here between 0.89 and 0.55. For example, you can set up 20 grid orders on Femex, nicely layered in. And then you'll really be in tune with the action. If you want to look at the bullish aspect where things could go, we see, okay, 1.05, 112 to 1.18 would actually be TP1 in the upper range. So here would be TP1. That one, among others, is currently very, very interesting. If a peace agreement were to be reached, it could go up to 1,251. And now the question I want to answer right away. What would you do if I had 20, 30, 40, 50, or $100,000? Honestly, I would. It depends on your DCA. So where is your average price? Are you below $1? Yes, then I would sell at least half in this region. You can leave the other half on the side to gamble with. Use the other half and reinvest it smartly into Bitcoin, so you can save very well there. That's kind of my proof to you. But this really applies to many of the altcoins as well. So what does it look like with Ethereum? We set that up together yesterday. Risk management down to $3,700. That still basically holds true at the moment. Now we see a little mini peak here. That's also clearly a flag that we formed here. That's a bear flag, so a bearish flag. And of course, it has a target, a lower one if you look at it that way. So here we basically have the flag. And if you take the flagpole is always the end of the target. If I place that here, then we're already heading down toward risk management. So I would prepare myself, at least in the first phase, for the possibility that we could see another drop below $4,000. Except for the reins, or rather the S, since it's a support, it might still hold. We'll see whether that's enough. But of course, we have to prepare ourselves for this scenario. Among other things, and I mean, we can take this away because we have the box here, and we picked this up yesterday. Wonderful how we prepared for that. What we can still do, of course, is we have the chance to show the J wave at the minimum point here. That means we have a very small wave here. If you look at it now, you'll see for yourself where it could go. So first, pullback level right where we are, $4,210. That's the pullback. Yes, here. We know this, right? Pullback. If that falls, if this support can't hold, then we'll drop to between $4,031 and $4,077. That's exactly at the R1. And now hold on. If that doesn't hold, so we'll do it. We'll rename it then, okay? Because otherwise, we'll put S1 in here because otherwise it gets critical. So, and now you can see exactly where the second major flag is, right there in this risk management area where we said between $3,800 and $3,700. So that's very important for us, okay? Hopefully you took good notes on that. Here, of course, we have the opportunity. We just need to set up protection here. Here we can always go along now. We've talked about that as well. He says, all right, then we'll just go along. Yes, then we know where things are headed. So currently, the bullish 0.5 is at $4,500 and then goes up 4,647 up towards $4,800. So then Bitcoin, yes, yes, as we said yesterday, it's been building up. What happened? Exactly this happened. We've continued to work on this box here. It's dropping now. Well, what does dropping mean? We have the range here between $106,000 and $130,000. The major psychological barrier in between is the 110. Of course, the even bigger barrier is the 100,000 mark. Currently, many analysts assume that Bitcoin will never fall below $100,000 again. I always want to say, guys, it also depends a bit on dominance, the strength, where Bitcoin dominates in capital. It should also be said here that if peace is achieved, the likelihood is high that Bitcoin will fall even further. Yes, because a lot of money will then flow into risk-on assets. And it's important that you understand this correctly up here. That doesn't mean that no capital will go into Bitcoin. That's not what I'm trying to say. Spot ETFs will also be bought, and we'll see that happen relatively quickly. But the ratio of inflow will shift massively towards the altcoin season and thus dominate there a bit as well. That's important for us, right? So that means profits will also be realized from Bitcoin into altcoins. That's a completely normal action by investors. And of course, we need to understand that. So, but that also means, and I can quickly show this again here, if you're in a situation where you say, okay, we're going to see the correction phase, which we've already prepared here. That means the 103,000 is very, very important, as we can see in the 4-hour chart. After that, it goes down to 94, 89, all the way to 64, $60,000. It's something we simply have to keep on our radar right now. As unlikely as it may sound, if an avalanche starts rolling, be it through the spot ETFs, then the fear factor, and so on and so forth. The $60,000 are still very much an issue for us right now, and that means for all of you out there, risk management absolutely needs to be in place. Okay? Good. Yeah, there's really nothing more to say about that. As I said, we also have bullish possibilities and, of course, could recover a bit as well. So a slight correction downward, not much, 134 to 137. The intermediate step, or TP1, would be at 113 to 125, provided we reclaim the $120,600. That's it from my side. I wish you all a wonderful trading day. Stay healthy. Of course, we'll continue to see and hear each other on Telegram, on X, wherever. Drop by. We're getting back to it. Back from vacation. Looking forward to seeing you, you seeing us. Leave something in the comments. Smash the subscribe button and the like button a bit. I'll say goodbye from Schwyz. Stay healthy and see you in the next video.